Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. We are reading from Adi Lila, chapter 5 and verse 22. We'll continue from there. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhete girim yat kripa tamham bande shikuram dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om. That's it. So let me just get back to the paragraph where I left this verse, because I was in the middle of the purport of verse 22. Okay. In the Vaikunthas, there are airplanes, but they make no tumultuous sounds. Material airplanes are not at all safe. They can fall down and crash at any time, for matter is imperfect in every respect. In the spiritual sky, however, the airplanes are also spiritual, and they are spiritually brilliant and bright. These airplanes do not fly business executives, politicians, or planning commissions as passengers, nor do they carry cargo or postal bags, for these are all unknown there. These planes are for pleasure trips only, and the residents of Vaikuntha fly in them with their heavenly, beautiful, fairy-like consorts. Therefore, these airplanes full of residents of Vaikuntha, both female and male, increase the beauty of the spiritual sky. We cannot imagine how beautiful they are, but their beauty may be compared to the clouds in the sky, accompanied by silver branches of electric lightning. The spiritual sky of Vaikuntha Lok is always decorated in this way. The full opulence of the internal potency of Godhead is always resplendent in Vaikuntha Lok, where goddesses of fortune are ever increasingly attached to serving the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. These goddesses of fortune, accompanied by their friends, always create a festive atmosphere of transcendental mirth. Always singing the glories of the Lord, they are not silent even for a moment. There are unlimited Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky, and the ratio of these planets to the material planets in the material sky is 3:1. I'll repeat, there are unlimited Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky, and the ratio of these planets to the material planets in the material sky is 3:1. Thus, the poor materialist is busy making political adjustments on a planet that is most insignificant in God's creation, to say nothing of this planet Earth. The whole universe, with innumerable planets throughout the galaxies, is comparable to a single mustard seed in a bag full of mustard seeds. But the poor materialist makes plans to live comfortably here, and thus wastes his valuable human energy in something that is doomed to frustration. Instead of wasting his time with business speculations, he should seek the life of plain living and high spiritual thinking, and thus save himself from perpetual materialistic unrest. Even if a materialist wants to enjoy developed material facilities, he can transfer himself to planets where he can experience material pleasures much more advanced than those available on Earth. The best plan is to prepare oneself to return to the spiritual sky after leaving the body. However, if one is intent on enjoying material facilities, one can transfer himself to other planets in the material sky by utilizing yogic powers. The playful spaceships of the astronauts are but childish entertainments and are of no use for this purpose. The Ashtang Yoke system is a materialistic art of controlling air by transferring it from the stomach to the navel, from the navel to the heart, from the heart to the collarbone, and from there to the eyeballs, from there to the cerebellum, and from there to any desired planet. The velocities of air and light are taken into consideration by the scientist, but he has no information of the velocity of the mind and intelligence. We have some limited experience of the velocity of the mind because in a moment we can transfer our minds to places hundreds of thousands of miles away. Intelligence is even finer. Finer than intelligence is the soul, which is not matter like mind and intelligence, but spirit or antimatter. The soul is hundreds of thousands of times finer and more powerful than intelligence. We can thus only imagine the velocity of the soul in its traveling from one planet to another. Needless to say, the soul travels by its own strength and not with the help of any kind of material vehicle. So intelligence is finer than the matter, and soul is even finer than the intelligence. The bestial civilization of eating, sleeping, fearing, and sense gratifying has misled modern man into forgetting how powerful a soul he has. As we have already described, the soul is a spiritual spark many, many times more illuminating, dazzling, and powerful than the sun, moon, or electricity. Human life is spoiled when a man does not realize his real identity with his soul. Lord Chaitanya appeared with Lord Nityananda to save man from this type of misleading civilization. Srimad Bhagavatam also describes how yogis can travel to all the planets in the universe where the vital force is lifted to the cerebellum. There is every chance that this force will burst out from the eyes, nose, ears, etc. As these are places that are known as the seventh orbit of the vital force, but the yogis can block these holes by complete suspension of air. The yogi then concentrates a vital force in the middle position, that is between the eyebrows. At this position, the yogi can think of the planet to which he wants to go after leaving the body. He can then decide where he wants to go, to the abode of Krsna in the transcendental Vaikunthas, from which he will not be required to descend into the material world or to travel to higher planets in the material universe. The perfect yogi is at liberty to do either. For the perfect yogi who has attained success in the method of leaving his body in perfect consciousness, transferring from one planet to another is as easy as ordinary man's walking to the grocery store. As already discussed, the material body is just a covering of the spiritual soul. Mind and intelligence are the undercoverings, and the gross body of earth, water, air, and so on is the overcoating of the soul. As such, any advanced soul who has realized himself by the yogic process, who knows the relationship between the matter and the spirit, can leave the gross dress of the soul in perfect order and as he desires. By the grace of God, we have complete freedom. Because the Lord is kind to us, we can live anywhere, either in the spiritual sky or in the material sky, upon whichever planet we desire. However, misuse of this freedom causes one to fall down into the material world and suffer the threefold miseries of conditioned life. The living of a miserable life in a material world by dint of the soul's choice is nicely illustrated by Milton in Paradise Lost. Similarly, by choice, the soul can regain paradise and return home back to Godhead. At the critical time of death, one can place the vital force between the two eyebrows and decide where he wants to go. If he is reluctant to maintain any connection with the material world, he can in less than a second reach the transcendental abode of Vaikuntha and appear there completely in his spiritual body, which will be suitable for him in the spiritual atmosphere. He has simply to desire to leave the material world both in finer and in grosser forms, and then move the vital force to the topmost part of the skull and leave the body from the hole in the skull called the Brahmarandhra. This is easy for one perfect in the practice of yoga. Of course, man is endowed with free will, and as such, if he does not want to free himself from the material world, he may enjoy the life of Brahmapad, occupation of the post of Brahma, and visit Siddhalok, the planets of material perfect beings, who have full capacities to control gravity, space and time. To visit these higher planets in the material universe, one need not give up his mind and intelligence, that is the finer matter, but need only give up grosser matter, the material body. Each and every planet has its particular atmosphere, and if one wants to travel to any particular planet within the material universe, one has to adapt his material body to the climatic condition of that planet. For instance, if one wants to go from India to Europe where the climatic condition is different, one has to change his dress accordingly. Similarly, a complete change of body is necessary if one wants to go to the transcendental planets of Vaikuntha. However, if one wants to go to the higher material planets, he can keep his finer dress of mind, intelligence and ego, but has to leave his gross dress, which is the body made of earth, water, fire and etc. When one goes to the transcendental planet, it is necessary to change both the finer and the gross bodies, for one has to reach the spiritual sky completely in a spiritual form. This change of dress will take place automatically at the time of death if one so desires. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that one will attain his next material body according to his desires at the time he leaves his body. The desire of the mind carries the soul to a suitable atmosphere as the wind carries aromas from one place to another. Unfortunately, those who are not yogis but gross materialists who throughout their lives indulge in sense gratification are puzzled by the disarrangement of the bodily and mental condition at the time of death. Such gross sensualists, encumbered by the main ideas, desires and association of the lives they have led, desire something against their interest and thus foolishly take on new bodies that perpetuate their material miseries. Systematic training of the mind and intelligence is therefore needed so that at the time of death one may consciously desire a suitable body either on this planet or another material planet or even a transcendental planet. A civilization that does not consider the progressive advancement of the immortal soul merely fosters a bestial life of ignorance. It is foolish to think that every soul that passes away goes to the same place. Either the soul goes to a place he desires at the time of death, or upon leaving his body he is forced to accept a position according to his acts in his previous life. The difference between the materialist and the yogi is that materialist cannot determine his next body, whereas a yogi can consciously attain a suitable body for enjoyment in the higher planets. Throughout his life, the gross materialist who is constantly after sense gratification spends all day earning his livelihood to maintain his family, and at night he wastes his energy in other enjoyments or else goes to sleep thinking about all he has done in the daytime. That is the monotonous life of the materialist. Although differently graded as businessmen, lawyers, politicians, professors, judges, coolies, pickpockets, laborers, and so on, materialists all simply engage in eating, sleeping, fearing, and sense gratification and thus spoil their valuable lives pursuing luxury and neglecting to perfect their lives through spiritual realization. Yogis, however, try to perfect their lives, and therefore the Bhagavad Gita enjoins that everyone should become a yogi. Yoga is a system for linking the soul in the service of the Lord. Only under superior guidance one can practice such yoga in his life without changing his social position. As already described, a yogi can go anywhere he desires without mechanical help. For a yogi can place his mind and intelligence within the air circulating inside his body, and by practicing the art of breath control, he can mix that air with the air that blows all over the universe outside his body. With the help of this universal air, a yogi can travel to any planet and get a body suitable for its atmosphere. We can understand this process by comparing it to the electronic transmission of radio messages. With radio transmitters, sound waves produced at a certain station can travel all over the earth in seconds, but sound is produced from the ethereal sky and as already explained, subtler than the ethereal sky is the mind, and finer than the mind is the intelligence. Spirit is still finer than the intelligence, and by nature it is completely different from matter. Thus we can just imagine how quickly the spirit soul can travel through the universal atmosphere. To come to the stage of manipulating finer elements like mind, intelligence, and spirit, one need appropriate training, an appropriate mode of life, and appropriate association. Such training depends upon sincere prayers, devotional service, achievement of success in mystic perfection, and the successful merging of oneself in the activities of the soul and supersoul. A gross materialist, whether he be an empiric philosopher, a scientist, a psychologist, or whatever, cannot attain such success through blunt efforts and word jugglery. Materialists who perform yagyas or great sacrifices are comparatively better than those gross materialists who do not know anything beyond laboratories and test tubes. The advanced materialists who perform such sacrifices can reach the planet called Vaishvanara, a fiery planet similar to the sun. On this planet, which is situated on the way to Brahmalok, the topmost planet in the universe, such an advanced materialist can free himself from all traces of vice and its effects. When such a materialist is purified, he can rise to the orbit of the pole star Dhruvalok. Within this orbit, which is called the Shishumara Chakra, is situated in Aditya Lokas and Vaikuntha planet within this universe. A purified materialist who has performed many sacrifices, undergone severe penances, and given the major portion of his wealth in charity can reach such planets as Dhruvalok, and if he becomes still more qualified there, he can penetrate still higher orbits and through the navel of the universe to reach the planet Maharlok, where sages like Bhrigu Muni live. In Maharlok, one can live even to the time of the partial annihilation of the universe. This annihilation begins when Anantadev, from the lowest position in the universe, produces a great blazing fire. The heat of this fire reaches even Maharlok, and then the residents of Maharlok travel to Brahmalok, which exists for twice the duration of Parardha time. In Brahmalok, there is an unlimited number of airplanes that are controlled not by yantra, that is the machine, but mantra, which is psychic action. Because of the existence of the mind and intelligence on Brahmalok, its residents have feelings of happiness and distress, but there is no cause of lamentation from old age, death, fear, or distress. They feel sympathy, however, for the suffering living beings who are consumed in the fire of annihilation. The residents of Brahmalok do not have gross material bodies to change at death, but they transform their subtle bodies into spiritual bodies and thus enter the spiritual sky. The residents of Brahmalok can attain perfection in three different ways. Virtuous persons who reach Brahmalok by dint of their pious work become masters of various planets after the resurrection of Brahma. Those who have worshipped Garbhodakshai Vishnu are liberated with Brahma, and those who are pure devotees of the personality of Godhead at once push through the covering of the universe and enter the spiritual sky. The numberless universes exist together in foam-like clusters, and so only some of them are surrounded by the water of the causal ocean. When agitated by the glance of Karanodakshai Vishnu, material nature produces the total elements, which are 8 in number and which gradually evolve from finer to gross. A part of ego is the sky, a part of which is air, a part of which is fire, a part of which is water, a part of which is earth. Thus one universe inflates to an area of 4 billion miles in diameter. A yogi who desires gradual liberation must penetrate all the different coverings of the universe, including the subtle coverings of the 3 qualitative modes of material nature. One who does this never has to return to this mortal world. According to Shukadev Goswami, the above description of the material spiritual skies is neither imaginary nor utopian. The actual facts are recorded in the Vedic hymns, and the Lord Vasudev disclosed them to Lord Brahma when Brahma satisfied him. One can achieve the perfection of life only when he has a definite idea of Vaikuntha and the Supreme Godhead. One should always think about and describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for this is recommended both in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad Puran, which are 2 authorized commentaries upon the Vedas. Lord Chaitanya has made all these subject matters easier for the fallen people of this age to accept, and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita has therefore presented them for the easy understanding of all concerned. So we will continue from here onwards next time. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.